Welcome back to the Kaijusaurus Podcast, the podcast in which a lifelong fan of Godzilla and Kaiju movies watches and reviews almost all of the films in the Godzilla series with what was once a newbie, a blank slate.
A fresh-faced, young, upper starter.
And now look at us.
Hardened, grizzled, Kaiju veterans. I've got a scar over my eye.
But still here.
Still here.
For you.
For you.
But
not
much longer. This is, and hopefully you'll know this by now. If not, take a seat, take a
Get
deep
a wet
breath.
cloth,
This
warm
is-
cloth,
This is
dab
our,
your forehead.
This is our penultimate episode. This is the pre-series finale.
Before we die.
Well, I mean, is life going to be worth living? Post Kaijusaurus Podcast.
There's pre and post Kaiju podcast lifestyle.
After we end the podcast, we're going to stop classifying periods of history and by pre and post war. It's going to be pre and post Kaijusaurus
PK
Podcast.
and PK. But you have to know which one is which.
Pre-KP.
But yes.
So this is our second to last episode. I am Steven Sloss.
I am Roz Menzies.
And we're the Kaijusaurus Podcast.
We're the boys. And we watched 2014's
Godzilla.
Just
That.
Singular title.
After Godzilla brackets 1954 and Godzilla brackets 1984 and Godzilla brackets 1998, we've got Godzilla brackets 2014.
It is happening again. Now, just before we get into it, I will preface this. I actually have seen this one. I saw this when it came out.
Way before all of this podcast nonsense.
Taking us back to the year 2014, before Steven and I invented the podcast.
Before we invented Kaiju cinema.
But yeah, before we invented Kaiju cinema, the podcast, and
No, go on, finish your
3D
joke.
technology, I don't know. Fuck it, whatever.
I read earlier that 3D cinema has had its lowest money-making year, I don't know, in 8 years. Why won't it just go away?
Yeah, just fuck off.
Who even thinks about it as an option anymore?
Well, as someone, the last 3D movie, the first and last 3D movie that I was fucking able to perceive with my weird fucked up eyes was Avatar. That was the only movie I actually saw in 3D, and after that, every movie they made since didn't work.
Perhaps ironically, the last movie I remember seeing in 3D was Godzilla 2014 director Gareth Edwards.
Oh, really?
Really, yeah.
Well, you saw him in 3D?
Yes, just like a projection of him in 3D. It was walking around me. No, I saw the film in 3D.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But you know what?
It is not. This film has a dark color palette, and 3D reduces the color range of color by what is it, like 30% or something?
I had that same problem with Up. I took
So-
the glasses off and enjoyed the bright, vibrant colours.
Bright, blurry colors.
Yeah, it was very blurry. But I've got squinty eyes, so if I squint my eyes, I can actually see the frame completely.
Ross has fucked eyes.
Fucked eyes, Ross. Fuck. That's my name. That's my poker name. Ross. Fuck eyes.
That's what they called him in high school. Fucked eyes, Ross.
Oh fuck eyes.
Oh, fuck eyes.
So I have seen this movie. If you think that's cheating, then we'll just fucking go and delete all the episodes then, won't we? I saw it in 2014. It was my first Godzilla film. At the time when we started the podcast, I didn't necessarily know whether or not that would count as the films we were going to do. So,
But here we are.
here we are.
This film came out in May 2014, nearly 4 years ago, and it's weird to me because it feels like this only came out about 6 months ago or a year ago for me, but it's 4 years later, Ross.
That feels exactly the right amount of time that it's been to me, personally.
Okay.
So, can you tell me about where Godzilla was
I can.
coming up to 2014?
But what's in it for me?
No.
Someone listening for once. Yes, I can. Ross, if you cast your mind back all the way back to, I don't know when we did, 1971's Godzilla versus Hedorah.
It was 2015. No, I don't know.
I'm going to guess it was late summer 2016.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah,
that sounds about right.
Godzilla versus Hedorah, the highly auteuristic, highly surreal anti-pollution Godzilla movie by director Yoshimitsu Banno. Now, Toho put the Japanese-produced Godzilla series on hiatus after the dire box office returns of 2004's Godzilla Final Wars. Not exactly the smash hit Toho wanted or needed it to be. So it was done. Toho's Godzilla series was put on an indefinite hiatus. Who knows? Maybe it was going to be forever.
Yeah, maybe.
I never really believed that. Godzilla is one of these properties that I sincerely believe that as long as cinema exists, as will Godzilla. But I think even as early as a year after Final Wars, in 2005 or 2006, I can't remember the specific dates, this is all going by memory, but the director of Godzilla vs. Hedorah, Yoshimitsu Banno, announces that he has had permission from Toho to try and put together a sort of like a little 3D IMAX movie, like a short film, like 40-45 minutes, like the sort of thing you might see at a theme park or something, and it was going to be Godzilla versus Hedorah 2. And it was going to be another environmentally conscious movie. Godzilla goes against a new form of Hedorah called Deathra or Deathla, and it was going to take place, I think, partially in the Amazonian rainforests, and Godzilla was going to fly again. And it was going to have sequences taking place in Las Vegas, etc., etc. And this film ended up being called Godzilla 3D to the Max. Had it ever been made?
Yes.
But it did not. The most it got was a pretty cool sort of... It was quite a poster, like a sort of concept poster. It's very cool. But this sort of... it was one of these things that seems to just keep trying to sputter to life, but it just sort of dies out. And then, it sort of... It goes away kind of quietly without anything being produced. And then... a few years later, in 2010, we find out why this attempt by Yoshimitsu Banno to create a new Godzilla feature has went away so quietly. It's because they've been... Banno has been at work, getting shit done. Because suddenly... Exactly.
TCOB.
Suddenly, in 2010, Warner Brothers, Legendary Pictures, and Toho announce that they are reviving Godzilla with a new American-made production, executive produced by Yoshimitsu Banno. As far as I know, there's been no official word on this film, Gareth Edwards' movie, being a direct product of Banno shopping a Godzilla product around. But
one can yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
If he was fighting in Godzilla's corner to do this short little film.
Yeah.
And, maybe it was a conduit between all these people.
Exactly, yeah. And even down to the fact that obviously we'll get into discussing the film properly later in the episode, but there are echoes of Banno's ideas in this film. Like, that this film doesn't have, an overtly environmentally conscious theme running through it, but it's there. And even things like the Las Vegas scenes, etc., that's what Banno was planning as well. So well done, Banno-san.
So what was the general reaction to to the best of your knowledge
when this was announced?
When this was announced.
I remember
American remake.
Because it was rumoured for a bit before it was officially announced, as these things always are, and there was a lot of skepticism. A lot of people were still remembering 1998. My feelings about all that.
Yes.
But this was several years ago now. A lot of people still remembering the first American attempt at a Godzilla feature film.
Yeah.
And I admit I was skeptical. But I think it was a healthy balance between this could be great, this is something to maybe get excited about, and cautious optimism. And then, of course, as with any sort of fandom with a large online presence, there's naysayers.
Yeah, of course.
Whether reasonable or unreasonable, they're always there.
And Gareth Edwards was announced.
This film was originally announced for a 2012 release,
right?
But it got delayed a little bit to 2014. And Gareth Edwards' directorial debut is a wonderful little socially conscious monster movie called Monsters. And that's a really excellent film. And I remember seeing that. I think it came out in It came out over here in I think spring 2010. I think
something like that. I didn't see it, though.
Yeah, it's a really excellent film. Really, really good little movie. Made for something like 35 grand or something.
Yeah, it was like a
actually maybe not that small. Maybe
No.
like £350,000 or something.
But
Yeah, small budget movie.
small.
And like he did all the visual effects on his laptop and stuff.
That's cool.
So yeah, Gareth directed Monsters, which is a really excellent movie. And I'm not just saying this to try and retroactively make myself look smart or like I had some sort of foresight, but I remember coming at that film and saying, God, that's a Western director who really could tackle Godzilla or a Japanese style kaiju film. Mm-hmm. And when he was announced as directing this film, I think in 2012 when it was meant to be coming out, I remember just thinking, yes, fuck yes.
Yeah.
That was my first big faith in this film. I thought they've gotten absolutely the right person to do it. They couldn't have got a more perfect director to direct a new Western film take on Godzilla. And I hold that opinion to this day.
Well, Gareth Edwards made
Rogue
a couple.
One.
Rogue One, that's right. He jumped onto Rogue One.
Although even just earlier today, there was more stuff about how much reshoots was done on Rogue One, etc.
Yeah, I was reading that.
And honestly, it doesn't really interest me all that
Yeah,
much.
I don't
care. You know my feelings about Star Wars and how they're going to hire directors and need to let those directors direct.
Yes.
But whatever. I think to this day, Gareth Edwards was the absolute pitch perfect choice to direct this new American Godzilla film, and I think he did an absolutely magnificent job. I really do think this film is a towering achievement.
Same. Shall we dive in?
Let's do it, unless you have any more questions
I don't
about
think so.
the origins of this film.
Is there anything specifically else to cover?
I don't think so. Nothing that I don't think will come up in the discussion.
We can always divert.
Fun fact: the brilliant opening title sequence, where it's we sort of recap the unofficial secret history of Monarch and its search for Godzilla and other massive unidentified terrestrial organisms, with all the names being scored out and stuff. That title sequence was designed by Kyle Cooper, who also did the opening title sequence for Godzilla Final Wars.
Oh wow, that's amazing! That's like a great little reach through. So, I mean, let's go through basics. Directed Gareth Edwards, titles by Kyle Cooper, music by Alexander Desplat.
Indeed.
Who's a very good composer.
He's wonderful.
We like him very much in the Mingus household. And his music's fantastic. Like, right off the bat. I mean, let's just dive into synopsisizing this bad boy.
Yes. Well, as I said, we open with an unofficial secret history of Monarch and its search for Godzilla. 1999 in the Philippines, Dr. Serizawa, Ken Watanabe, and Dr. Vivian Graham,
Sally Hawkins,
arrived to investigate a collapsed mining facility and find the bones of a giant prehistoric creature and the trail of something else, which has fucked off.
Yes.
And meanwhile, in Janjira, Japan, Bryan Cranston's character, Joe Brody, or Jody,
or JB, or B. Krantz.
Is it?
Yeah.
Gotta love B. Krantz.
B. Krantz.
B. Krantz, rewind. He is a safety technician at a nuclear facility, and his wife is also there, played
also working
by
Juliette Binoche.
There we go,
the Binoche.
Indeed,
in a great turn. She's. I mean, I don't think we get an awful lot of chance to talk about her.
Brief,
she's
but
really
great.
only in the prologue, but she's a great actress, Juliette Binoche, and she brings just a little bit extra to what is kind of a thankless task. Dead mother, as an object of pain for everyone else, but she doesn't really get a lot to do.
Sure,
she's grand. She does a lot with what she's got. And
I agree.
Fun to watch.
Yeah, and after a devastating accident at the nuclear plant, Joe is left not widowed. What's the
widowed?
Sure, widowed.
Well, yeah, he.
She dies.
She dies.
Spoilers.
Yes, spoilers, guys.
So,
she dies in essentially a nuclear accident that possibly is caused by an earthquake or tremors under the ground. He ultimately has to close the door to avoid contamination of the outside world, trapping her inside. Mm-hmm. Watched in the distance from their young son, Ford. Mm-hmm. And then we flash forward.
And that's how they became the Brody Bunch.
That's it, the painful tale of the Brody Bunch.
The terrible tale of the Brody Bunch.
So we flash forward, Ford now, the young boy, is grown up, modern day, he's a soldier with a wife and kids, he's not there often, but he's just come home from leave, but gets the call that his father, Bryan Cranston, who still lives in Japan, has been arrested, sneaking into the remains of the nuclear facility and the surrounding town.
The quarantine zone. Mm-hmm.
He goes back to Japan to find his father, picks him up, takes him out, pays his bail, and finds that he's something of a crank.
A conspiracy theorist.
Walls of papers, reams of documents, physics notebooks, newspaper articles. He seems to be clued into some sort of network of I mean, he's entirely not out of place. What was the Godzilla network?
The Godzilla
called?
Prediction Network.
He's part of that. He's part of the Godzilla Prediction Network. Absolutely.
Without knowing about the existence of Godzilla.
Yes.
What are we predicting?
There's just the Prediction Network. The PM.
What do you think of Bryan Cranston's Japanese? I could watch a whole film of Bryan Cranston
attempting Japanese.
Speaking Japanese. I would very much like to see Bryan Cranston go over to Japan and make a movie there and deliver all of his lines in Japanese.
I would do that. Just absolutely.
Do a little. You seen Isle of Dogs?
I haven't seen Isle of Dogs yet. I was going to say, is that not what Isle of Dogs is?
Well, I was going to say it would be the opposite, because a lot of the Japanese dialogue in Isle of Dogs goes untranslated, whereas Cranston's character is obviously perfect fluent English, so they could do it.
When they dub it for Japan, they should get Bryan Cranston to learn Japanese for his character. But yeah, no, I mean, his it makes sense for his character. He's an expat American technician. He probably speaks technical Japanese. He seems fluent enough. It is quite funny when he does it, because Bryan Cranston, we were talking about this, Bryan Cranston is quite a funny performer sometimes, even when he's serious.
Yeah.
Not to his detriment. Not at all to his detriment, but he just performs with such like aplomb and like forcefulness.
Yeah, like you said, he really goes with like such gravitas, and he really fucking imbues every line he says with a lot of force and a lot of aggressive acting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I mean, while we talk about the prologue, while we've just kind of passed that, I mean, it's very effective. You really feel for the situation, for Bryan Cranston and his wife. They get a little bit of a scene in the car, and particularly Juliette Binoche, Bryan Cranston as well, they sell it really well. The pain, the sort of heartbreak, the trauma of having to do this, the worry that she might just turn around the corner any second, and we later find out that while she probably wouldn't have made it, they do get a chance. She makes it to the door as it closes. She's already contaminated.
The latest in a long line of suicide and self-sacrifice in the Godzilla series.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, back to the modern day, and Bryan Cranston, B. Krantz, convinces his son Ford to come back to the quarantine zone with him one last time. They go back, they visit the ruins of their old home.
To get his discs.
And data, and they're picked up by an unidentified military force which is now occupying the former nuclear base and has re-established it. The reason being that there's something in there now. The creature that we saw earlier.
Something alive.
They're picked up for questioning, and upon questioning, there is an understanding, a realization that Bryan Cranston was involved.
And what sets him apart from other potential crackpots or conspiracy theorists that they may have come across is that he knows what he's talking about.
Yes. And actually has the background.
Yeah. And you see that in Serizawa and Graham, Ken Watanabe and Sally Hawkins, who are now working at the facility in the present day. You see it in their faces that Cranston is seeing things that they've missed. Mm-hmm. So that's how he's afforded a bit of respect.
So there's a creature in the facility
Sort of heart of the
underground,
facility, which they're monitoring.
we call it MUTO.
MUTO, yeah, the massive unidentified terrestrial organism. Although it is no longer terrestrial, it is airborne.
And it can affect electricity. It puts out a sort of electromagnetic
That is not
pulse.
a transformer malfunction, it's an electromagnetic pulse!
And promptly does that.
A lot of hand
A lot
gesturing.
of hands from Bryan Cranston. Bryan Cranston, again, one of my favourite actors. I do think he's fantastic. But it's nice to see. I actually like it when actors do their usual tics.
He chews the scenery a lot in this
He does.
film.
He chews the scenery a lot
His
in everything he does.
jaw is clenched a lot. Yeah, it's, like I said, his mouth tends to go very large and very square. When
I mean, there's nothing wrong with chewing the scenery. Ultimately, and if you're an actor that can do it, you can do it. And Bryan Cranston can fucking
does it well. Yeah,
he can fucking eat.
My wife died here.
He can eat the curtains. Like he can eat the chair. He's like effing and jeffing and standing up.
He won't chew the scenery.
At one point, there's a shot
where
where Bryan Cranston stands up and the camera like out of frame. And I swear, he probably just did that in the passion of the scene, and it probably wasn't blocked that he would stand up. But he's fantastic. I mean, he's really only in this segment of the film that the monster sort of springs to life, because they've been pestering it, blasting it, and the decision is made to kill it outright, and it kind of reacts to that. In
that scene where they're firing a lot of sort of electrical currents and electrical bolts into the sort of MUTO cocoon, I got a lot of classic 60s Toho vibes from that, the sort of the pulsating sort of laserish lightningy weaponry just going.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an absolute shit mash. No one really knows what to do. They're just firing weapons at it. They're just throwing the pod at it. But it breaks loose, rips apart the base, destroys things left and right, and Bryan Cranston is sort of crushed in the rubble.
And we lose him.
We'll die the next day, but we lose him. Then we follow Aaron Taylor-Johnson. We follow Brody around. We'll do that a fucking lot. Just watch him running around wreckage, sorting himself out. The next morning, as the air clears and Bryan Cranston's in recovery, Serizawa and
Vivian Graham
explain the situation.
Yes, reveal the secret history of Monarch and its quest to find and document a creature called Gojira, which first appeared in 1954, awakened by submarines reaching the lower depths, and it's revealed in a secret history that the American nuclear tests in the Pacific were not tests, they were trying to kill it. But kill it they did not.
No.
Anger him, I'm sure they did.
I mean, this is as good a place as any to just
dive into the film.
To dive into this particular section. I want to ask you what you kind of make of the lore and how it's different and how it's similar to Godzilla lore in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a big point. It's markedly different in the 1998 one.
Absolutely,
to the point that it sort of recontextualizes what Godzilla is about.
Yeah.
Do you feel that there's that same issue here, or not quite?
I don't feel the issue is the same here, no. While they don't, in this film, while they don't commit to Godzilla being directly awakened by American nuclear testing, they make it very, very clear that this played, a role in his awakening in the modern age. And even down to, submarines reaching the lower depths.
Well, they reference the Cold War, this sort of aggrandizing one-upmanship.
So, yeah, exactly. While, they may not commit entirely to American nuclear testing being the reason for Godzilla's awakening, it is at least part of it.
Yes.
And I personally think it's done gracefully and respectfully.
Absolutely.
And it's like we discussed in the live episode with the 1998 movie, they don't just pass the buck.
Yeah,
they don't just say
the fucking French.
'Twas the French.
'Twas the French killed the beast.
it was the French awoken the creature. So I think it's done very well, and they also play into this film. I feel rekindles a lot of the mythological aspects of Godzilla's character. They posit that this is a super ancient alpha predator, as Dr. Serizawa of course named in homage to Akihiko Hirata's character in the original movie. As Dr. Serizawa refers to him in Alpha Predator, a very, very ancient creature. And then what I like is they don't try and make him a dinosaur or something like that. It's just a really a super ancient, weird fucking thing.
Yeah.
And I also like that they posit that these really prehistoric ancient creatures are naturally sort of radioactive back in a time when the Earth's atmosphere was many times more radioactive than it is today. These creatures thrived on it, like Godzilla and the MUTOs, its natural enemy. So I think reinstating a lot of the mythological aspects of Godzilla's character is great, and even in the opening credits we get a lot of scenes of Godzilla's dorsal fins skimming across the water on across near Pacific Islands and that sort of thing, and it's like I just really like that, like reinstating a lot of the mystery and intrigue around the character, which I'm not going to say it's to the detriment of many of the Godzilla sequels that it lost that, because of course it did, because they're sequels.
Yeah.
And you cannot constantly have, the same level of mystery and intrigue and horror and unknowingness as was in Honda's original movie.
No, there's a diminishing return.
Like I keep
unless
saying,
you change it up.
You cannot maintain a franchise and keep the tone of that movie. No. But this is a different case. I'm really getting into it now, Roth.
Good. Stephen wrote more notes than me this time around.
I did. This is the biggest amount of notes I've written in a while.
Am I right in saying you have had the one notebook the entire time?
Oh no, I've had fucking loads.
Oh well.
My Godzilla 2014 notes, they're almost a whole page, Ross.
Oh my goodness.
Whereas, for example, my Godzilla Tokyo SOS notes were 2 short bullet points. And, that's...
So,
don't want to talk
back
about
to
that
what you were saying. I mean, going on to what you say, I mean, part of the thing, particularly with the prologue, part of the thing I think that's nice and effective with this backstory, with this lore, is in the prologue, and how it does keep its roots in Japan.
I agree.
It starts as in Japan. I mean, certainly the movie then takes us off to America. It's an American movie. Of course, we're going to focus on America in this American-made movie.
I think that's fair.
But what's nice is that it does start in Japan. It does sort of treat us to that. It is respectful to Godzilla's roots as a Japanese monster.
Absolutely.
And to kaiju is something that within these films usually belongs to Japan.
Absolutely. And while of course it's an easy homage or reference to make, I do like that they say, that in 1954 was the first time we discovered Godzilla.
Yeah.
Which of course it is.
It's a nice reference.
But what I like, talking about the reinstating of a lot of the mystery and intrigue around Godzilla, is that that was lost in a lot of the sequels. And even after breaks in the series, I don't feel that was fully captured again. But this film, Godzilla's been off the screen for 10 years by the point this comes out. So, and not only that, the last run of Godzilla films hasn't been released theatrically in America or really in the Western world. The last Japanese-produced Godzilla film to get a big stateside release is Godzilla 2000. In 2000. Mm-hmm. So by this point, Godzilla's been off American screens for 14 years. So this film is afforded the luxury of reinstating the intrigue and mystery and the build-up. This film does have that luxury of building up the character again, making it something special and something that we slowly find out about, instead of just doing the easy thing, which would have been, everyone knows what Godzilla is. Mm-hmm. Just put him in the first scene.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just fire him in.
Yeah.
No, it's perfectly layered. He's brought in at just the right time. You see just enough of him. So I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
So once we deal with this initial skirmish, this Muto escapes. Mm-hmm. Really now, for our main character, for Ford, the focus really is just get home, get to the family, get back to them, and he's essentially just waylaid on various detours before, once he reaches American shores, brought back into his military service.
Absolutely. What I like a lot about this film, and specifically sort of Ford's journey, is it's not quite a globe-trotting film, because it's Japan and America. And the Philippines, sorry. Maybe you could call it globe-trotting, but it takes place across a lot of locations.
Yeah.
Like Philippines, then Japan, then San Francisco, then back to Japan, and then on a big boat for a while.
The secret, it's
Hawaii
sort of
and
episodic.
yeah.
I mean, for better or for worse, because it makes sense to do, and it works best for a kind of movie. The movie ultimately is interested in following Godzilla, and the best way to do that is have your main character just follow Godzilla wherever he goes. Yeah. So it's some of it's not necessarily contrived, but it's just having him be in the military, having him be sort of swept back up into service, gives us the perfect opportunity to continue to follow Godzilla. Aaron Taylor Johnson's there every key moment, give or take, particularly at the end, and that's where we need him to be.
It gives our protagonist a reason to be in the middle of the action, not just watching it from a rooftop or something. He's right in the middle of it.
Well, that's it. Yeah, there's a specific reason he's a soldier rather than a sailor, journalist, scientist, which we've kind of had in previous Godzilla films.
Aaron Taylor Johnson has gotten a lot of flack for this movie, his performance in it, and not entirely his own fault, but for the character of Ford Brody himself. What do you think of that? Because I actually think he gives a very sort of reserved, subtle performance as someone. I mean, you can see even in his first few scenes, he's coming back from, I think, a tour of duty, which has been, I think, he says about a year and a half or something.
A while.
He comes back to his home, reconnecting with his wife and his young son, and even in his own home, he doesn't feel quite at home.
No,
because there's a scene, for example, where he's getting called back over to Japan to bail his dad out of jail, and he's looking through the drawers and he's saying, "Oh, I can't find my pants, trousers, whatever," and it's like. He doesn't.
Yeah, he doesn't know where it's in his own house. Yeah,
exactly.
No, I mean that's true. I mean his performance is grand. It's good. He plays a soldier swept up in all this. I think the unfortunate thing, and I'll get into this in more detail later on, because if I do have a complaint about the film, I think it's that killing Bryan Cranston off in the first act is a failure. In a way, because that's kind of the only story that Aaron Taylor Johnson's character has. That's the only development that there is for his character, is in that first half of the film. He goes from not believing his father and sharing this sort of trauma with him to believing his father. Yeah. He's then dead, and he just needs to go home and spends the rest of the movie trying to go home.
See, that is one of the biggest criticisms levelled at this movie, is that they killed off Cranston too early, or they shouldn't have killed him off at all. But I hear what you're saying. What would the character have done afterwards?
Well, that's it. It's he probably would have been of use. Would he
have palled about with Serizawa?
Yeah, probably palling about with Serizawa, and then firing off exposition,
and then like Serizawa and Graham, be absent from the main action of the finale.
Maybe, but I mean, it's not that he would necessarily have much more to do in the plot. Mm-hmm. It's just that the fact that he's dead kind of just kills off the storyline for Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's not like we needed more for Bryan Cranston to do. It's more just that his absence kind of doesn't do it much else for Aaron Taylor Johnson. So if Aaron Taylor Johnson had a continuing relationship with his father, a new relationship with his father that's built on this realization, and almost like, the whole movie's about, I make a point very early on about how Brody is running away from his problems, not facing them, and certainly he ultimately faces Godzilla. That would even be more effective if he's able to do that, not necessarily side by side with his dad, but with his dad still in his life, and we would get the opportunity, probably they would both survive, we would get the opportunity to see them repair the relationship in some way. Again, this isn't a major criticism. This is just, kind of where my instinct lies. And basically, what you asked me was, how do you think, what do you think of the performance? I think the performance is absolutely fine. I think for where the character goes and what he does, it's absolutely perfect. I'd say there's not much more for me to say about Aaron Taylor Johnson's performance, quite honestly. He plays the part just fine. And I think if there was more for him to do, if there was more for him to react off of later on in the film, there'd be more to say about that. Yeah. Again, that's not even a criticism. I really do enjoy this movie. Just that's where my instinct is on that particular note.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's just for Brody get home and then to a lesser extent help out on this Godzilla situation. But really, you just want to get home, save the family. Mm-hmm. And that's not where the movie starts off at, you know?
Sure, yeah.
You know, the movie's, his story at the start is his relationship with his father, and his story at the end is, I've got to save my family from nuclear devastation. You could have changed it. But it's not a sore spot for me in any way.
Yeah.
It's just that's kind of where I'm at on that one.
But could you say that losing his father directly because of this situation and losing his mother earlier in life, losing his if you want to put it this way, his first family, drives his urge to go home, to get home and save his wife and son.
Sure. But
but did Christ,
but that doesn't come across in anything that Aaron Johnson does.
But did he have to die to drive that? Yeah.
Yeah, I just think like they had him there. He could have been useful later on in the movie. Is all I'm really saying. But again, I'm happy with the final product.
Or if he was to die with some sort of resolution about knowing fully what happened.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he could have died. Honestly, he could have died in the second act. He could have just kept it on a little longer, just to kind of see the relationship continue past this realization that, oh no, crazy old dad actually was right.
Yeah.
Just give us another couple scenes.
I don't mind. I really don't mind at all Cranston dying when he did, or under the circumstances that he did. If I had to pull the film up for something regarding that, it would be that once he's dead and once we're past the scene where Ford is briefed by Serizawa and Graham, we forget about it.
Well, that's it as well.
Yeah.
I mean, if the movie had ended with
like
some sort of elimination,
he's not mentioned again.
Yeah.
Ford. I mean, I'm not saying Ford should like fucking point the gun at the Muto and say, "For my mom and dad."
For Papa. No, but I mean that kind of ties into what I'm saying.
If there was some sort of like, say, Ford was given this sort of the resolution and if he was able to put to bed what his dad wasn't allowed to.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly. Yeah. To throw the shit out.
Yeah.
To just focus on his life. Yeah. Well, I think that kind of ties into what I'm saying. There's not even a nod to him at the end of the movie, which shows you how, like, you know, irrelevant in the end that first act relationship kind of becomes. It's kind of swept up in following Godzilla, which is fine because ultimately that last half of the movie is about Godzilla and it's absolutely fucking banging, and we will get to that.
Yeah.
But
maybe Ford should have had the closure that Joe didn't get.
Certainly. And something I did like was, so where we are in the story, Joe leaves Japan, not Joe, beg your pardon, Brody leaves Japan, Aaron Taylor Johnson leaves Japan, makes it to Hawaii, he's trying to get out, meets a little boy on the train who's been separated by his parents. Great sequence.
The Hawaii sequence.
Yeah, the rising action of Hawaii is happening all around us. The Muto, Godzilla, all coalescing on Hawaii now, moving from Japan. Aaron Taylor Johnson catches this boy that's been separated from his family and now he's in charge of him for the next little while, gives him his little toy soldier that he rescued from that house. And again, more like that would have been nice. More little things like that for Aaron Taylor Johnson to do.
Sure, yeah. If we saw him thaw a bit throughout the film.
And it's no detriment to Aaron Taylor Johnson. It's just that the way the story goes, there's no necessity for Aaron Taylor Johnson to do anything but essentially work for the rest of the movie, to do the mission he has to do, to run around and complete all the different tasks that he has and to get to the places he needs to go to save the world. And so again, the sort of personal element falls a bit to the wayside, which is fine because we see more and more of Godzilla and we understand more and more of what Godzilla is. So we should, rather than probably synopsisizing all the different points that Aaron Taylor Johnson gets to, basically he makes it to San Francisco by the skin of his teeth, now in charge of a clockwork bomb that can't be fucked about with by the EMP. But we can talk about how Godzilla's properly introduced and how Godzilla sort of enters into the film.
Well, Godzilla first makes landfall in the film in Honolulu in Hawaii, where Ford is making a stopover to get a civilian plane back to San Francisco. But unfortunately, the Muto, the male Muto, the smaller winged Muto, has also appeared there and dragged a Russian nuclear submarine on land and releases an EMP, which knocks out all the electricity across the island. And so Ford is in a sort of train taking care of a lost little boy, and it's all knocked out. And then when the lights eventually come back on, the MUTO is right down there at the monorail tracks in what's a brilliant reveal. Just the lights slowly coming back on. The doof, 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 doof.
Yeah,
it's there.
It's great.
Really, really, like a scary part. I think the MUTOs actually do manage to be quite scary as well, but that's a bigger thing with them, which I'll not discuss right now. But the biggest part of the Honolulu sequence, the best part of it, is when, while everyone's distracted by the MUTO situation, there's the sort of tide is brought out, and there's lots of like beached sea life, little fish and stuff on the beach. And a family notices this, and then the alarms start blazing. And they realise something's wrong. They don't know what's wrong. Something's wrong. There's an explosion on the hill. And so everyone starts running from a tidal wave, which starts to sweep through the city up near the top of buildings, drowning the city out. People taking refuge on the top of buildings in images that's very evocative of 21st century natural disasters in populated areas. So we see this huge, massive water sweeping cars and people and trees and debris and everything through the city. We follow that across in a sort of pan, and then we see soldiers all in the one shot. We see soldiers on top of on a rooftop, and they fire red flares up, and we follow the flares up, and then this huge hulking reptilian mass comes into frame, and the flares just sort of bounce off it, and this is our first real glimpse at Godzilla in the movie. And there's a really beautiful silent moment where a lot of people on the rooftops next to Godzilla, not fully revealed yet, we're just seeing parts of him, hints at him. People are just staring at him in stunned silence, when suddenly these soldiers who have not even noticed right behind them start to open fire, and they shit themselves because they've been in such stunned awe at this creature that they've not even noticed the soldiers all around them. And so Godzilla is making his way to the MUTO, which he eventually reaches at the airport, and the first big reveal of Godzilla, we track up from his feet straight up to his body, and he lets out a huge roar, and we cut away. Gareth, you tease.
I know. I mean, Godzilla's utilised very well in the right place. I mean, when this movie came out, I remember the people that just aren't super familiar with I feel like no matter how much Godzilla's in a movie that you show to like a mainstream Western audience, they'll be like, "There's not enough Godzilla."
I entirely agree. Yeah. Well, let's discuss another one of the big quote-unquote controversies. It's not a real controversy. About this film is the amount of screen time Godzilla gets. It ties into what we were saying earlier, how this film, with Godzilla having been off American screens for almost 15 years, is afforded the sort of luxury to build him back up into an event, like something big and special that should be revealed. So this film Godzilla does appear an hour into the film, into a 2-hour film. But I think it absolutely works in this film's favour. I think Godzilla's screen time in this movie is perfect. I think it's what it absolutely should be in terms of reintroducing the character to a global audience. This is a big, huge fucking event movie from Warner Brothers. It's going to be seen across the globe. Build the character back up as something special, and I don't mind with Gareth going around his bedroom slowly taking his clothes off one by one and teasing us, as long as you get the payoff. And this film fucking does.
Which you get.
It really does pay off.
Look, at the end of the movie, you get a full Godzilla shot in broad daylight in all his fucking majesty and glory. Literally at a point where the world has realised that he is a hero, not a monster, and is being like heaped with cheers and gratitude. You got your money shot. You got your Godzilla shot.
No,
I agree. I just think that They just don't get it. Man, they said the same shit about like Cloverfield. People just don't literally. People don't know what they want.
I mean, isn't like one of the oldest fucking rules of, I would say genre fiction, but even just fiction in general is fucking less is more.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's absolutely prevalent here. Like I keep saying, they took the opportunity to build Godzilla back up and slowly reintroduce him, and they did it perfectly. I'm not saying they should do this in the sequel again, because they shouldn't. No. It's been done.
Well, like you said, yeah.
He's been done.
You can't milk
he
that.
is re-established. Run with it now. You can't do it again, but it worked absolutely perfectly here.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I have absolutely no problem with Godzilla's screen time in this film, because I think as a whole it works magnificently. It really, really, really does pay off in the third act.
I mean, yeah. The two major, or probably three major parts. You get Godzilla using his atomic fire the first time, which is banging.
Again, it's reintroduced very, very. It's reintroduced like a character, actually. Like a character of its own. Like Godzilla's obscured by the dust and smoke of debris and fire, etc. And in that smoke, you just slowly see from the tip of his tail rising up his back the sort of blue plumes igniting and then he appears out of the smoke and fucking blasts the female Muto away. Mm-hmm. And you literally hear like the soldiers on the ground saying, "Holy shit, did you see that?" and then,
same, agreed. And then a little later on, he uses it once more to fucking down the throat of the Muto and rips his head off.
When I first saw that, I thought we were just sort of getting, oh cool, they're going to do the King Kong, they're going to break the thing's jaw, and then he gets his hands on its mouth and then just sicks down its mouth. Beheading it. I just thought, holy fucking shit.
It's cool. And then you get the other really nice sort of money shots bit of Godzilla you get is right at the end. Aaron Taylor Johnson, wounded, wearied, at the pier, looks through the dust and smoke, and staring right at him is Godzilla.
Yeah.
Banging.
That great moment where they actually they're I mean, it's easy to draw the parallel, they're the same. We're the same, you and I. But two battle weary veterans really just sharing a quiet moment in a catastrophic apocalyptic situation. It's really nice.
No, it is very nice. I mean, what I will say, I'll tie back into my general points on Ford's story kind of fizzling out personally, although he still pushes the movie forward. Is that scene with Godzilla, as great as a moment it is, part of me is like, well, what's their relationship here? And which I know is a bit of a contrived point to make, because you can really say that about any instance of Godzilla human interaction. He's just one little person, but I think there just is just a little bit lacking of personal connection for God. I mean, if anything, for Brody, he really should be having that face to face with the Muto that killed his dad. That's the monster that fucked him up. Godzilla's some other thing that's helping out.
Well, once you're
done, but again, not to even diminish that point, it's a great scene. It's fantastic. You really do. More on Godzilla's side, the empathy is for me there. It would have been nice to have a bit more about Ford. Yeah.
Well, going off that, what I like about this film in its first act especially is that it seemed, the discovery in the Philippine mines and the attack on the Japanese power plant at Janjira, and from there, this film seems to tease the audience a bit in thinking that we're being led up to the Godzilla reveal. I mean, especially with the power plant attack. That's like Godzilla 101.
Yeah.
So it kind of tricks the audience a little bit into thinking we're getting a reveal of Godzilla, but what we get is the first Muto instead, which I think is, I mean, I'm not going to go as far to say it's subversion, but I think it's a great sort of thing to pull on the audience. And what do you think of the Mutos?
They're great, they're cool, they're really well designed, they're really effective for being unique. And I think the choice to make unique creatures almost generic. I mean, Muto is kind of it literally is an acronym.
It's an acronym, yeah.
Not quite generic, but these kind of almost basic monsters. They're sort of terrestrial. They're mammals of some strange, or not mammals. What's the, you know what I mean?
Sure. Invertebrates.
That's
maybe?
the one. Yeah. But they work perfectly. I think keeping it to just Godzilla as named monster was a smart idea. I know now we're done with that. We can go into Godzilla versus King Kong. And
now that the
Monster
character,
Island as well.
now that it's been successfully introduced as a character and a concept and a franchise.
Now we can bring in all these other monsters and fire them in.
I agree.
But I think just giving Godzilla like two almost alien goons to fight.
I think it was a great idea to first of all give Godzilla monsters to fight in this movie and to make it a new monster without any baggage holding over from what is by this point a 60-year-old franchise.
That's it.
It's like there's no point in ignoring that. With a franchise of that who's been in existence that long, there does come a certain amount of baggage, and that's why I've spoken so much about how I think the reintroduction of Godzilla as a film character on a global scale is so successful in this movie, and how they treat him both in terms of the story and as a character and his screen time in it. And I think it was a really excellent idea to have two new monsters in the film that are not overpowered, they're not over designed, as admittedly a lot of Kaiju can be, but what I also like, having said that, is that they're not just the sort of maybe prototypical American giant monster of giant animal. They're not just a giant creature. They're big fucking giant weirdos that have a power. They have an attack.
Yes.
They have a weird unnatural attack. You can send out electrical magnetic pulses and knock out electricity, etc., etc. What I also really like about the MUTOs is that they are a really nice aesthetic contrast to Godzilla himself.
Yes.
The MUTOs are sleek and smooth looking, and they're
gangly
and insectoid, and they have like a very flat head, a very smooth flat head, and
kind of get real low.
What I like about the characterization of Godzilla in this film is that we've established that it's a super ancient prehistoric alpha predator, and he looks it. This Godzilla looks like an old thing. And I don't mean, in this fucking pompous Lovecraftian sense, it's one of the great old ones. Mm-hmm. I just mean it looks fucking old.
Absolutely. Already fucking world weary. Survived
exactly
2 dozen nukes.
This Godzilla looks like a creature past its prime.
Yeah.
And what I like is we have those moments in the Battle of San Francisco later in the movie, after he defeats the male Muto, slamming it into a building and putting its head through part of the building. He does have that brief moment where he lurches over and breathes very heavily, as if this battle really is taking its toll on him. This is old man Godzilla.
Yeah.
He's past his prime. He's had his fighting heyday, and it's probably millions of years ago. So he has that moment where he's lurched over, catching his breath, but then he's not allowed to catch his breath because the building falls on him.
Yes.
And it's nice because this Godzilla is past its prime, because even after it manages to defeat the female Muto, he collapses from exhaustion. And remains that way for, I think we can assume, at least a day or a few days
until
or
the next
something.
day or a couple days later.
I really like the characterization of Godzilla in this film, and I like it so much because it's so not what a lot of us expected. I think the characterization of Godzilla in this film, a lot of people, including myself maybe, expected what we ultimately got from the Godzilla in Shin Godzilla, like this really terrifying, unstoppable
force.
Monster.
Can't be reasoned with, can't be reckoned with, isn't on your side.
But what we got was a Godzilla whose characterization was actually much more in line with the Godzilla from the 60s and the 70s. Like, the tired... I draw this comparison a lot. The tired old gunslinger walking into town.
Yeah, absolutely.
And defeating the young upstarts.
And fucking off.
And leaving again. But with people cheering him on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And with the world realising that this is a protector, this is a guardian, this is an ally.
Not quite, exactly the Titanic superhero that he became in the 70s.
No.
But even, Serizawa...
But it's a start.
Exactly. Sarah's Alan himself says, nature has an order, a power to restore balance. I believe he is that power.
Yes.
So he's gonna... Sarah's Alan just wants to see them fight them.
Oh, absolutely. He's just... I want my pals, I want my to fight. But no, seeing Godzilla given like proper respect, it is so satisfying.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's nice to see that the start of that relationship as well, because a lot of times Godzilla movies, particularly in the 60s and 70s, would almost start with this, well, obviously Godzilla protected us from the monsters last time, so he'll do it again.
Yeah.
But this was actually nice to see that actual moment of realization where the world goes, oh, wait, I thought he was going to tear through the city as well. I thought we had 3 monsters, but now that they're both dead, he seems to be going away.
He just leaves.
I guess he was helping us.
And see near the end when everyone in the sort of relief stations in the stadium are watching the big screens and Godzilla's leaving and you hear the cheers. Like,
That's great. That's so good.
And it says, "King of the Monsters, Saviour of our city." Oh, that brought a tear in my eye. That really did.
And what's nice is because it's that I know obviously they're now going in and doing more. They're doing the proper monster sorry to call it that, but the monster universe thing.
It is literally called the MonsterVerse.
Oh well, that's fine then. But it's nice because that's the crucial part of being able to introduce all these monsters. I think I'd be much less interested if we had this very serious monster fighting off against other serious monsters. But once you humanize Godzilla a little bit, give him this attitude, give him this weary protector that's reluctantly or sort of like has to pick up the mantle.
Gives you the license to run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And make the world get a lot more crazy, a lot more science fiction based, a little bit more fantastical, and a bit more loose with hyper realism.
Well, what I wanted to talk to you about there is you mentioned the MonsterVerse. As I'm sure you'll know if you're listening to this, this film has somewhat retroactively become the first entry in Legendary Pictures MonsterVerse, which is now 2 entries in. We've got Godzilla and Kong Skull Island, directed by Jordan Vogt Roberts, came out last March 2017. And
he's doing something new, isn't he?
Metal Gear, maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
And next March we're getting the sequel to this, Godzilla King of the Monsters, directed by Mike Dougherty. And then in 2020 we're getting the culmination of this 4-part MonsterVerse so far, Godzilla vs. Kong, directed by Adam Wingard. Now, I know you and I both have a lot to say about cinematic universes. And I know in particular you and I have a lot of feelings about Marvel, in that neither of us are comic book guys. Neither of us are, exactly, in love with Marvel or the MCU.
Yeah.
I think, don't get me wrong, I think it's an astounding cinematic achievement.
But it's also an astounding cinematic. Don't know what the word is, but fuck up.
But despite whatever we might feel, it had never been done before.
Yeah.
On this sort of scale, or intentionally, anyway. I mean, you can make the argument that the old Universal monster movies were all sort of retconned into one continuity with the crossovers and stuff, but it was never the game plan.
Dark Universe, baby, that's the only good one.
Well, I'll get to that. Now, one of my favourite Twitter accounts, Film Crit Hulk. That's a great Twitter account. Said a while ago, and it's been rattling around in my head ever since. Everyone wants to be Marvel, but no one is prepared to make Iron Man.
Yes.
And I think that's a really great way of looking at it. And, maybe I'm biased, right, okay? But Legendary and Gareth Edwards did make Iron Man.
They set the character up.
When this film came out, they didn't announce it as part 1 of a grand 4-part cinematic universe. It was allowed to breathe and be its own thing. And after it was successful, this film was a big success, by the way. After it was successful, then they started to look at the possibilities of making it the first part in a sort of wider universe. They already had Skull Island in development, but it was Legendary was developing that with Universal at that point. So they managed to bring it over to Warner Brothers and retooled it slightly to be part of this continuity. Mostly like bringing Monarch into it, that sort of thing. But what I like about Godzilla and Skull Island is that if you didn't know they were part of the same universe, you wouldn't know.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah,
If you didn't know, you wouldn't know.
it's there as flavour.
And that's how it should be.
It's there as a sort of a little further exploration of lore to kind of deepen the text a little bit.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, the films stand on their own.
And despite what we could say on length for a while about what Marvel has become, how the movies have become, how all the movies have the same tone, Marvel committed to that with Iron Man back in 2008. They made sure they made a good standalone superhero movie that if nothing else came after it, if not even Iron Man 2 came after it, they still made a good movie.
Well, that's it.
And it could stand on its own. And if nothing else, say the MCU had never happened after Iron Man, the little post-credit scene with Nick Fury,
Fun.
it's just an Easter egg.
Yeah, well, that's it.
That would have
Go
been
read
it.
the comics.
Exactly.
You have them already.
It's for the fans, whatever.
Well, there you
but
go, yeah.
This is how it should be done, I think. And again, maybe I'm biased, but really, I don't think I am. I don't think the point I'm making is biased.
No, I think it's just not that hard. I just think
There we go.
Make a good movie.
What you don't
If you
do is fucking try and make The Mummy a sort of action horror. And say, this is part one of
The Dark Universe.
The Dark Universe, the
Buckle
TV
up,
show.
fuckers.
Yeah. We're making
Yeah.
The Mummy. We're making, I think what was meant to be next was Bride of Frankenstein.
And then they said that vampire one they made years ago was also part of it.
No, that was meant, Dracula Untold was meant to be the start of it, but,
Right.
it was shit. So they said, nah.
Can't do that. You gotta.
And they were going to make like Bride of Frankenstein with Javier Bardem as a Frankenstein
Bride of
monster.
Frankenstein.
Yeah, obviously. And then they were going to make The Invisible Man with Johnny Depp. And I don't know what even the game plan
You could
was.
fucking see him with all those fucking rings on.
It's like, yes, this is a whole different subject, obviously.
No,
but
it's good.
just quickly, these classic monsters can be sympathetic, right? But they're not heroes.
No.
Stop treating them like they can be fucking superheroes.
Yeah.
You can't. I don't know what the game plan was, but you can't fucking like make a natural story out of Frankenstein monster and the Wolfman and the Mummy and the creature from the Black Lagoon all teaming up to take down Dracula. Don't want that.
I mean, that's. I mean, and for these Godzilla movies, these new American ones, it works because Godzilla did it first.
Yeah.
In the 60s, 50s, 40s.
Exactly, yeah.
Not
Well,
40s.
No, I absolutely agree. Like, so Godzilla 54, Godzilla raids again. Then we had Rodan, individual movie. Mothra, standalone movie. Then they all met in Ghidorah, the three-headed monster.
That's it. Yeah, all tied it together.
Not that it was the game plan. I'm not saying it was a game plan at all, but
it kind of unfolded naturally.
Yeah.
There's forward steps, there's backward steps, and look, I mean, the Japanese Godzillas are clearly kind of going a different direction, which I think is for those movies. They're going to a perfect direction.
Yeah.
Like Shin Godzilla is fucking mwah. So it actually works really well for the American films to kind of go the route of Godzilla, King of the Monsters. He's going to fight Rodan. He's going to fight this, and let America have fun with this for a bit.
Yeah.
And let's take Godzilla to weird new places with Hideaki Anno.
yes, I'm still so surprised that it's the American series that took the fun route.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm pleased, but still surprised.
It's the better of the two. I think it's nice to see the Japanese Godzilla really go in this kind of apocalyptic direction, nihilistic direction, and this one, to go the fun route.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Basically.
Cool. And what I was going to say is, like, even the MonsterVerse is only 2 entries in out of an announced 4. Mm-hmm. 4 is reasonable, I think, to have as a sort of pre-announced slate. Even those Godzilla and Kong Skull Island, very different movies. They look different visually, they're different tonally. Like I said to you, in Gareth Edwards' film Godzilla, the closest you get to a joke is Devil in Disguise playing over the MUTOs Las Vegas rampage, or when Brody tries to impress with his bomb disposal knowledge, and the guy says, "Is my jaw supposed to drop?" Mm-hmm. But other than that, it's a film that's without jokes and humour. And I don't say that to its detriment. No. It's just a film that takes itself and its premise and its character seriously and with respect. Whereas Skull Island is a much lighter movie. There's a lot of like banter with characters and that sort of thing. It's a brighter, more colourful movie, but still sharing a fictional world, and believably so. The way I look at it is Gareth Edwards' Godzilla plays like a serious Ishiro Honda, Takeshi Kimura movie, whereas Skull Island plays a lot more like Jun Fukuda, Shinichi Sekizawa Island Adventure.
I like that comparison, yeah.
But they're still part of the same world,
Yeah,
and they
same
complement
tapestry.
each other very well.
Ah.
And like even in, for example, Skull Island, John Goodman's character's backstory is that he was on a navy ship that was attacked by a creature, and that's what's driven him to look into these mysteries and join Monarch and stuff. What they were going to do was, he produces a photo of Godzilla and says, "This is what attacked my ship," but that was vetoed, saying, "No, leave it ambiguous, because people might not have seen Godzilla. People might not know that it's part of this world. People,
Yeah, we'll surprise them later.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, they had the hints at Godzilla, Mothra, Rodan, and King Ghidorah, but in the end credits.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
None
Do a little
of,
credits
not
scenes, that's fine.
named by name or anything. It's
Yeah.
like, have you ever heard of Project Rodan?
Yeah, not like what a lot of these movies do now, which is have the epilogue like 10 minutes before the film ends, and then spend 10 minutes like
Doing
teasing other films, then go credits, and then go, well, we should actually have a few more bits to do, so let's put 2 end credit scenes.
Yeah, exactly. I think the MonsterVerse is in a really interesting place, and while everyone's absorbed in Marvel and everyone's watching the Hindenburg that is the DC movies and pointing and laughing at the Dark Universe.
I've still only seen Suicide Squad.
It's
and
been
I'm
cancelled,
proud.
by the way, Dark Universe. Did you know that? Yeah.
I knew that.
They just kind of went, the
God.
Jonah Hill gif. But meanwhile, the MonsterVerse is just quietly ploughing on.
That's it. It's in and out. Look, 4 movies is fine. And if, God forbid, they don't do that well, they'll go, okay, well, we tried. And
Exactly.
go about it, and you'll have a complete package, which is nice.
Yeah, there we go.
That's the way to do it. When you write a book, you're writing a singular book.
Yeah.
Maybe you're writing a trilogy. You're going to write you've got a rough idea in mind. It might get a little more, might get a little less. But you aren't just indefinitely fucking firing off into the ether forever. Same if you make a TV show, you're not making an unlimited amount of episodes.
Absolutely.
You're going to make a series of 6 or 12 or 24. So a series of 4 episodes or 4 films, great. If that does well, you'll make more. You may make a bigger arc. That's fine.
But earn them.
Earn them, make them good movies that have points and characters.
Because this film, Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, part of a 60-year franchise, can entirely stand on its own.
Yeah.
It's got a start, middle, and end.
That's great.
It's open for a sequel, but doesn't set one up.
Absolutely.
Just ends with Godzilla back into the ocean. That's it.
We can go anywhere from
Sequel
there.
can happen.
The sequel can be any of the Godzilla movies.
Sequel can happen, but doesn't have to happen for that film to make sense.
Yeah. Godzilla movies can kind of be sequels to each other, like even retroactively. Like
even in spirit and stuff.
Yeah, I mean ones that were made later can actually just be sequels to, you can watch them in, not quite, because some are directly related, but really, if you want a tonal, you can make your own tonal journey with Godzilla. You
I
can
absolutely
choose one,
agree.
then do another one that was made 10 years earlier, and then do another one that was made like 20 years later, and go, these are my 3, this is the order I want to watch them, and it works well for me.
I absolutely agree, yeah. And like this movie, Skull Island, again with a now 85-year-old film character, can completely be its own thing. It's devoid of this movie also. It just runs along, does its own thing. You don't need to have seen literally any other film ever
No.
to be up to speed with it. That's how it should be.
Absolutely.
Films. I don't feel like it's a hard thing to understand to say that films, no matter how big or what franchise they're part of, need a start, middle, and end.
Yes, they do. They need to have characters and be about something and have a point. It's not that hard, guys. It's not that hard.
I was going to bring up a few just little highlights from
Yeah,
this film.
have
which
some final points.
Are you all right? You're a bit tired.
Oh no, I was doing a humorously tired, exasperated bit. Have a couple of final points, Stephen.
Something I was going to bring up is, like a lot of the best kaiju films, it always comes back to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There's just a little reminder of it in this film. Serizawa hands Admiral Stenz, played by David Strathairn, a pocket watch which he says belonged to his father and which stopped ticking when on the morning of Hiroshima.
Ah.
You know, the exact circumstances of it is left ambiguous, but it's there as a reminder that, you know, nuclear weaponry probably isn't the way to go.
Yes.
Especially when you're dealing with creatures that feed on
Nukes.
nuclear energy.
Yeah.
So I really like that. It always comes back to Shin Godzilla did
Well,
it
that's
as well
it, yeah.
2
It
years
brings
later.
it back to Japan. It kind of keeps that context
keep
alive.
Keep it conscious. Like,
Yeah.
always have it at the back. I'm not saying that you have to do
No.
what this film did and say, you know, and like always name Hiroshima or Nagasaki explicitly, but, you know, be conscious
it was
of
good
it.
for them to do, particularly for the first one.
And coming from a Japanese character
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
A sequence I love is the rail bridge.
That's great.
What I really like about this scene is that it's a wonderful example of how genuine, intimate horror can be achieved with a giant creature.
Oh.
Because it's a super intense scene as they're sort of trying to hide lying flat on the rail bridge as this giant monolithic creature stalks them and just walks around them under the bridge, over it, next to it, not quite finding them. And I just think it's a really excellent quiet moment. And like I said, shows how intimate horror can be done on such with such a huge scale. And it's and just like the sort of the creaks and the groans and just the noises of the noises caused by just the movement of this huge creature is just
Yeah, I mean the movie's built on these really good set pieces. There's that one. There's the airdrop with Kiri, the sort of orchestral piece. I think it's Ligeti with my musical credits. And that's an absolutely fantastic one as well. Visually funny, absolutely terrifying. This a descent drop into darkness, despair, redness. The movie's built really well on these big set pieces.
When one of the MUTOs unleashes an EMP in the heart of San Francisco, and then just suddenly planes start dropping from the sky, and it starts with that really great bit where you're like, wait, what the fuck? As like a pilot, is just sort of it's Elle Brody, Ford's wife, Elizabeth Olsen, who sees him at first just as pilot parachuting down into San Francisco. And then just behind her, his plane comes crashing down into a building. And then these jets start just falling down into San Francisco Bay and into the city and stuff.
And into the boats.
Yeah, exactly. And it's...
and it's great.
It's
I
really
mean, the movie just really understands what it's like for Godzilla to be there.
Yeah.
It really understands every little aspect. It feels true and feels right.
Mm-hmm.
This is what would happen. This is how a situation on a bridge would go down. This is what it's like to dive into a city under fire like that. And it's just impeccably well made.
And again, the Golden Gate Bridge attack. Golden Gate Bridge doesn't have a great time in
No, it does
blockbusters.
not.
But I love... I know you kind of have like a soft spot for like Save the Kids moments.
Kids in danger stuff is always great.
Yeah, like, and when the bus driver just like gets the kids to safety through the calamity on the Golden Gate Bridge and just rams through the barricades. Yeah,
zooming past army. Great.
What I love about that scene is like when the kids are looking out at Godzilla, like sort of outside of the bridge, then he sort of tears through it. It's like the kids are screaming with sort of fear and excitement.
Yeah.
Because like, you can tell it in both, because they're not really probably screaming in fear. They're just making a lot of noise. Like they know they're in danger, but they're loving it. Like, you know, like a kid watching a Godzilla movie.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Oh, that part in particular was great. But yeah, no, they like just threaded along these really great set pieces that are just absolutely great. I feel like we did a very good cover round on that movie.
Yeah,
I mean, even in the discussion got into the future of the series and where we're going.
Yeah.
Is there anything major else that we need to talk about it?
Nothing else, I don't think. I don't think I have any big talking points. What I was going to mention to you is that star of the original movie, Akira Takarada, filmed a cameo for this.
Oh, right.
But it didn't make it into the final movie.
Oh, well.
Which, you know, at the time was kind of gutting to hear, but I feel like it may have been conspicuous. It's not that kind of movie.
Yeah,
I feel it doesn't.
It's unfortunate.
It doesn't do winks for fans, that sort of thing. You know, it's not like fucking Stan Lee's going to show up. Do you know what I mean? It's not that kind of.
Greetings, Kaiju lover. That's unfortunate, but what are you going to do?
What it was going to be is when Ford first arrives in Japan to pick up Joe, Takarada was going to be the customs officer that greets him and says, "Welcome to Japan, Mr. Brody."
Oh well.
How necessary a scene?
That's it. It's not strictly necessarily seen. If you were desperate to have him, you could have shoved him in as an officer of some description, or just popped him in at one of the meeting rooms or meeting sections. It's unfortunate, but what are you going to do?
I mean, don't get me wrong, I would have been thrilled to see Takarada in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be so good.
Ultimately, I do think it would have been conspicuous.
Yeah, I think so.
Look! It would have been. I think it would have been obvious to worldwide audiences. It would have been obvious that it's something they should be getting, but they don't get it.
Yeah, well, that's it, and it might leave a sore spot.
Yeah,
I think they were better to just leave it. Look, if they have the opportunity in future films to drop names and pop in little references and cameos, that's fine, do it. But I think in this one, that was a fine decision.
The cutting of Takarada's scene is the reason that a certain sect of fandom has an absolutely pathetic vendetta against this movie. They feel personally, and I'm not exaggerating when I say this, personally betrayed by Legendary Pictures. And I was at a panel at G-Fest in 2016 with Takarada, and the individual chairing the panel was clearly trying to goad Takarada into shitting on Gareth Edwards and Legendary Pictures and this film, because he phrased it as, for those who don't know, the Legendary Pictures promised the fans a cameo by Takarada-san, and he was very obviously, clearly trying to build Takarada up to shit on the film and its people who made it, etc. But elegant, classy gentleman, he didn't rise to it at all. He just says that he received a very beautifully written, handwritten letter of apology from Gareth Edwards explaining that it had been cut and why it had been cut out and his regret over the cut, and he says he seemed to be okay with it. So
what a gent.
What a man, what a man, what a man,
what a manny good man. Fucked it. What a pro, what a professional. He's been in the business, man. He knows that shit.
He knows.
That's very funny.
He knows how it works.
He knows how it works. It's not that big a deal.
Of course he wasn't going to rise to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course not.
I mean, shut the fuck
He's
up.
Just happy. I'm sure he was happy to be asked.
Exactly, and there's a really...
That's all. It's just the fact they asked is good enough.
Exactly, and there's a great on-set photo of him and Edwards posing with like his sign that says Akira Takarada.
Oh, that's nice. That's nice. Look, they had fun. They had a nice time on set. They probably had a nice afternoon.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. It would have been nice if it had been put on the Blu-ray.
Yeah, that's a shame. There's not a scene.
I'm sure we'll see it someday.
Yeah, someone will grab it. Someone will nick it.
Do you have any final words?
I don't for this particular film. I honestly feel like we covered everything.
Well, I do.
Oh,
yeah.
Tell me more.
I want to wrap up the discussion of this film by reading a review of it from 2014 that comes from the independent Scottish cultural magazine, The Skinny. And The Skinny included this film, Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, at the number 10 spot on its top 10 films of 2014.
Oh, really?
And this is a short review. It's a very short review. It's one paragraph, but it is the single best review of this film I have ever read, and it perfectly surmises everything I love about this film. So I'm just going to read it out.
Yeah, of course.
Skinny declared Gareth Edwards' Godzilla the number 10 out of the top 10 films of 2014. Okay. Heavily informed by Steven Spielberg in his better blockbuster days, Gareth Edwards' horror-tinged Godzilla update is a big effects movie with genuine poetic craft behind its visual storytelling, intense, disorienting, intimate, and often rousing in its apocalyptic take on the Green Giant and company. It has palpable emotion that evades so many blockbusters, mainly thanks to its eschewing of many of their trappings through restraint, patience, and giving every shot actual meaning and weight, and its much criticised decision to stick with bare archetypal characters absolutely works for its grander preoccupation with how humanity's personal concerns amount to frivolity in the face of annihilation.
Absolutely, that is a very good review, and I think that sort of sums up kind of where we're both at. I mean, for me, like it's a technical banger of a film.
Yeah.
It's so well made, and it's so well realised in its sequences, in its set pieces, in its design, and how the movie just propels along at a constant speed, just getting you to all these situations. As I mentioned earlier, on a sort of personal character level, I would have liked just a little bit more of a relationship between Brody and his father, a wee bit more characterization, just to propel us through the movie a little bit more, just to give us a wee bit more edge and a bit more of a reason to care about Brody in particular, since he's the person that we're following around. But at the same time, I absolutely recognise that, particularly in the latter half of the film, really like that review says, the focus is on the scenario, the focus is on Godzilla. And at the end of the movie, it is Godzilla's film. Exactly. His name is the title. So I am fine with that.
I think this film is honestly a colossal achievement. In so many terms. In terms of bringing Godzilla back to the big screen, bringing Godzilla back as a recognisable worldwide character and brand and franchise, in setting up future installments, not setting up, in being good enough to allow future installments to even happen. Pacific Rim did come out the year before this film in 2013, but I personally credit this film, Gareth Edwards' Godzilla, with starting this new huge international kaiju renaissance we're currently experiencing. I like Pacific Rim, but in my view, it struck the match, but the flame fizzled out. Whereas this film started the fire, and it's not stopped burning since.
Thanks, Billy Joel. So I think we slammed that one. Oh, that's coming in at about an hour and 20.
No bad, eh?
We've done not so bad. We had a lot to talk about this film, and I think the folks deserved a wee bit more meaty discussion.
So. And just quickly, what I was going to cap off with there is that I recognise there are issues in the film like you spoke about earlier, but it's one of these films that I enjoy it so much, and it means so much to me on a personal level, and I think the technical artistry behind it is so fully realised and extraordinary that I can entirely forgive all of its shortcomings.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I still think it's a fully realised blockbuster masterwork of a really, really underrated cinematic visionary.
Peace. Preach, brother.
Also, this and Kung Fu Panda 3 both feature Bryan Cranston as estranged fathers who reconnect with their long-lost sons, and there's even a scene in both of them where they welcome their long-lost son into their home and say, "I don't get a lot of visitors. Sorry for the mess."
Is it the exact same line?
It's not the exact same line, but
it's the same idea.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That is amazing.
Bryan Cranston plays Poe's dad.
Do you think there'll be a trilogy ender for that?
For what?
For the Bryan Cranston and his son trilogy.
They're going to cross over.
It'll be up there with the Javier Bardem Weird Hair trilogy of No Country for Old Men, The Counselor, and Skyfall.
Oh yeah.
But folks, let's wrap that one up. Let's wrap up the
well
cast.
Done. That was
a good one. That was a meaty.
I'm pleased with that. Yeah,
that was a proper critical eye on the film as well.
I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as we enjoyed talking about it.
Absolutely. So I guess we'll be back next time for Shin.
For Kaijusaurus Podcast finale.
For a nice goodbye show. We want it to be fun. I mean, we've talked about Shin before, so I think we plan to just watch the movie again, chatting about it a wee bit. But we'll probably just spend a lot of time maybe wrapping up, chatting about our thoughts on the show, maybe good moments. Yeah. What we thought would be fun and would to just be get some Q&A from you guys. So if you want to fire us out questions on the Facebook page, either as a direct message to the page or as a comment, we're both on Twitter, at Steven Scrivello and at Roz Menzies.
No longer private.
No longer private. I'm back in the open, baby. Send us a tweet. However you want to reach us with that.
The Facebook page, Kaijusaurus Podcast.
Yeah, the Facebook page, Kaijusaurus Podcast. Remember that. It's your good place to go for main updates these days.
Email, kaijusaurus@hotmail.co.uk.
That's right. We have the email as well, kaijusaurus@hotmail.co.uk. Send us your questions. We'll rattle through a couple of them.
Questions, testimonies, thoughts.
Tell whatever you want to tell us. We'll make sure that a good handful get read out and interacted with. And I think we're going to get a wee bottle of Prosecco as well, aren't we?
I think so. Have a wee celebration on air.
You're welcome to join us. Raise your glass to the Kaijusaurus Podcast.
This has been the Kaijusaurus Podcast. I'm Steven Sloss.
And I am Roz Menzies. I was
Reminding
going to say Ross Sloss there, but that's next year.
Reminding you that the arrogance of man is thinking that nature is in our control and not the other way around.
Let them fight. Let them fight. Bye.